All right, everyone, welcome back after dinner. I hope your dinner break was enjoyable. I'm going to move into the last two sections for the seminar this evening, and if time permits, we'll do a question and answer session afterward. I'll try to move through these rather swiftly. There's not too much material left. Like I said, two sections. I'm going to break down some of the dark occult symbolism in National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO, launch mission patches. And I think after I show you these patches, you'll agree that there are forces at work in government and in these intelligence offices that most certainly have a bizarre religion and a bizarre sense of what symbolism they find attractive, let's say. So again, the NRO is the office that has the least amount of employees working for them officially and the largest intelligence budget allocated to that department. Let's start looking at some of their symbolism in their mission patches. So this is one of their patches that essentially contains, of course, the all-seeing eye. Now, what you're going to see here also is constant images of these symbols floating above or over the earth. And you'll see stars as well. Now, this these four stars, people have suggested the four, and you'll see a 6-star configuration as well with 5 and 1. Some people have suggested that this represents different areas from which these satellites were worked on and maybe launched. You know, there's an area in the Groom Lake facility called Area 4 or S4. You know, 4 stars here could indicate that. I'm not saying it definitely does. But you'll see some patches with, 5 stars together and then 1 offset. And people think that that means Area 51. But this patch, which is their fleet operation patch, that's what FLT Ops stands for. The Latin insignia underneath it, nos no una, nos abeo una, means we float together or we swim together. But, in this connotation, it means, we swim together in the sky or in space, okay? And we depart together. So nos no una means we float or swim together in Latin. And then nos abeo una means we depart together, meaning we arrive together as a flotilla and we leave or depart together as a flotilla. Now, my take on this is, how many people have seen these so-called UFO fleets? We don't know what these things are. If you've ever seen the videos, they certainly float together, and when they leave together. I'm not saying that's definitely what this is a reference to, but it kind of does make you think what kind of very exotic, if not otherworldly technologies these people are working on and are putting in our skies. This is one of the most blatantly dark occult and satanic patches I've ever seen from the symbolism and Latin insignia that is on it. Again, you see the 4 stars. You'll see that over and over again, more likely than not representing S4. If I had to take a best guesstimate, I would say that's what those 4 stars represent, although I could be incorrect about that. Now, you see the all-seeing eye in the pyramid, okay? And then the NRO patch designation, the mission designation. Now, we saw what the all-seeing eye represented. It represents God, divinity, okay? The light of the Creator. And, of course, the pyramid, the stone representing the block to that light. Now, what makes this satanic is the fact that the rocket carrying the payload or the mission satellite is getting ready to fly over the top of the all-seeing eye in its trajectory. Now, that in and of itself would not be so sinister, but what makes it sinister is the Latin term Supra Summus. I know that's a little bit difficult to see on this screen. Hopefully people can see that. It's S-U-P-R-A S-U-M-M-U-S, Supra Summus. In Latin, that means, get ready for this, higher than the Most High. Okay? Higher than the Most High. In other words, we're higher than God. Because we're putting these satellites in such a high orbit, it sees everything that's going on the earth. You know, we look at ourselves as the all-seeing eye. We're higher than God. Now, to me, they can't get any more blasphemous or blatant than that, but, you know, you'll see how far they go. Here's one. Their mission launch was number 32, XXXII in Roman numerals. Of course, that is the last level of Freemasonry before what is known as illuminized or illuminated Freemasonry, representing levels 33 and above. The 32 to 33 degrees in Freemasonry represents the difference between frozen water and flowing water, ice or liquid water. You know, the heat of the sun or the light melts water at 33 degrees and changes it from ice into flowing liquid water. What I wanted to point out here is the blatantly bird-like or reptilian eye symbolism. That's definitely not a human eye in this iconography. We're talking about something that has scales over top of it toward the right-hand side for sure. You know, people want to say, oh, the all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar bill is reptilian. You know, that's from the type of pattern that engraving system that was originally, you know, cut with or engraved with, you know, that pattern that it takes on. It doesn't it represents a human eye, a human styled eye. This clearly is not a human styled eye and has very bird-like or possibly serpent-like connotation to it. Again, I'm going to follow themes with these where, you know, we're looking at all-seeing eye symbolism within these mission patches. Here's one, Annuit Coeptus, again, the all-seeing eye very clearly portrayed. Again, you have the number 4 inside the triangle at the bottom. The number 4 or 4 stars comes up over and over and over again in these patches. Again, NROL stands for National Reconnaissance Office Launch, number 32. Again, there's that 32 number as well. Here's some owl symbolism contained in National Reconnaissance patch from 2000, and the phrase, "We own the night," clearly with a reference to being able to see in the dark or surveil in the dark. Okay, we're going to go through some that have blatantly satanic overtones to them as far as Luciferian symbolism or blatant satanic symbolism. So this is launch number 49, clearly with a demon or fallen angel form in it that they have named Betty here. And it's obscuring the sun with its wing, holding some kind of a trident and a wrench in the other hand, with its hair on fire and a serpent-like snake going around its body. Then you see the earth partly occulted by shadow, and underneath it says, Primoris gravis ex occasus, which means in Latin, first and important from the fall, is the best that I can translate that. Or first and grave or heavy or important from the fall. Now what that means is obviously very occulted. Now I couldn't tell you what this mission is ultimately about, but clearly there's blatant satanic symbolism in it, and the earth is in shadow. And occasus could also mean sunset. So you see the sun being obscured. If you look at that as, if you turn that and look at it as hills and the sun going behind it, it could be construed as a sunset. And you see the shadow of the earth, representing the line between light and darkness as the sun sets or rises. So occasus could mean the fall, clearly resonating with fallen angel symbolism, but it could also mean sunset or the obscuration or occultation of light. So very clear satanic overtones or Luciferian overtones there. Here's one, NROL 66, National Reconnaissance Office Launch 66, Get Your Kicks on 66, with a clear representation of the Baal figure, the bull, representation of Satan. Again, that's what these Moloch ceremonies usually were dedicated to, the bull god Molech. So that's a depiction of Molech if there ever was one, as far as I'm concerned. Here's one with the Egyptian god of the underworld, Anubis, depicted, looking very sinister with red eyes and, fangs and a, tongue out. And the blatant phallic symbol of the, the missile coming up from the earth. Yep. Here's more blatant satanic symbolism. Pan, standing for ostensibly palladium at night. But Pan, of course, is another demon figure in certain, pagan mythology. So here's another one representing the phoenix, and it says, and flames. Clearly, satanic or diabolical overtones there. The phrase MELIOR DIABOLUS QUEM SCIES means better the devil you know. In other words, you'd rather have us doing this than somehow the devil you don't know going out there and doing this. So, we have your interest in mind. You better trust us, better the devil you know, with the American flag behind the phoenix. Here's one that is a clear reference to dark occultists not wanting anybody to get involved in their business. It's a blatant warning or threat. And this is special projects of the NRO with a dragon coming out of the clouds shooting lightning bolts down. You'll see a repeated imagery of dragons, lightning bolts pointed at or down at the earth. And the Latin insignia at the top says, Procul este profani, which means away with the profane. The profane are not welcome here, in other words. Okay? Away with the profane. They're telling people, if you're not on the inner circle, if you're not in the esoteric circle, if you're not with us, with the initiates, the sorcerers who do this type of hidden, covert science work, then you are one of the profane and your eyes are not welcome here. For people who want to look into the connections of NASA and the occult, or space agencies in the United States in general in the occult, it's a rabbit hole. You could study that for a lifetime in and of itself. How many dark magicians were involved in different space agencies, and they're clearly telling you who they are and telling you you're not welcome. Here's more. So this section is all about dragons. A dragon is a symbol of power, authority, knowledge, hidden knowledge especially. And this one, you have the dragon holding the entire planet, surrounding the entire planet, as if he's either, it's his child or perhaps he's getting ready to eat it. But it says, omnis vestri substructio est servus ad nobis. And this is a very broken Latin phrase. It's not really structured properly in Latin deliberately. I'll tell you what it means in a moment, but I just want to point out there's that 5 and 1 star configuration that I talked about that some people have suggested represents Area 51 or 51. Again, May Day is a big occult satanic holiday known as Walpurgisnacht. All right, Walpurgisnacht or Beltane. It means bell's wheel, the beginning of the or the midpoint of the spring season, I should say, where sacrifice in the form of blood sacrifice was traditionally offered toward the sun and the earth in order to ensure bountiful spring growth, so there would be a bountiful harvest in the reaping season. So, omnis vestri substructio est servus ad nobis means all your base are belong to us. Now, for people who may know what that means, there's a reason it's in that very improper grammar. It's a reference to a big internet meme that was going around in the early 2000s, I believe, where some video game manufacturer from Japan had put out this video game with all kinds of grammatical errors in English, where they didn't even, check the grammar, and they put out, this game that had laughably bad English in it. And one of the phrases that the mission commander, the evil mission commander, says to the good guys is, all your base are belong to us. Meaning, we're going to take all your bases now, but they didn't get the translation right in the game, in the video game. So they were kind of playing on this theme, saying all your base are belong to us, because clearly what this probably is a reconnaissance mission to send satellites up to penetrate into underground bunkers or underground bases. And they're basically saying you have nowhere to hide. Here's another dragon holding the earth. This is a repeated theme throughout. He's got a diamond in his tail, and of course, he's an American dragon. He has the American flag as his wings, This is a wonderful American symbolism, don't you think? I mean, that's American through and through there. Here's more snakes curled around the earth, serpent symbolism. Again, you see this repeated theme of 4 stars and then 1. Here's, 4 stars over here and then 2. Not quite sure what the stars really represent there, but clearly you have more reptilian symbolism surrounding the earth. The Latin phrase numquam ante numquam iterum means never before and never again. And again, I can't tell you what that means. It's obviously inside knowledge regarding whatever this particular mission or launch was about. The Information Assurance Office works closely with the NRO. They call themselves the defenders of the domain. This concept of knighthood, as if it's something that was so valiant, when really what the knights were the protectors of the king's land, basically reinforcing feudalism. And what they're doing is they're showing you we're constructing the world grid, where there's total surveillance all the time. And that's the earth in a cage. I mean, the symbol right there is the earth inside of a cage. And these people think they're somehow creating or defending freedom, Oh, they're defenders of the domain of slavery, all right. They're defenders of the domain of feudalism, for sure. Here's some blatant alien symbolism, and I would say demonic symbolism. I've broken down in my occult mockery presentation how the Air Force logo is actually a demon's face. I mean, if you look at it, the eyes, you have the brows, the horns going up, the nose coming down, and then the mouth looking very sinister. I could see it very clearly. I don't know how people who revere the symbol cannot see that that's a demon's face. And if I had to make a best guesstimate, that's the demon known as Chort. In every depiction I've ever seen of Chort portrayed, that's his face. I could be wrong about that, but it certainly looks like it to me. Then you have the typical alien gray with the huge almond-shaped black eyes, no nose, no mouth to speak of, and large head. The typical alien gray. The phrase underneath says, Oderant dum metuant, which means, let them hate as long as they fear. I mean, is that like something, that depicts American values? Now, I believe that is a phrase first uttered by the Roman Emperor Caligula, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a statement by Caligula. Oderant dum metuant meant, let them hate as long as they fear. They can hate me as long as they fear me. It's like saying, we're in control, we know we're in control, and you can hate it all you want as long as you're afraid. It's blatant posturing. It's up in your face as far as I'm concerned. And what is the reference, what is the direct connection to these alien grays is what I want to know. I mean, why is this on a United States mission patch, a gray alien face? People don't think there's anything weird to that. They're just playing games, they're just having some fun and, putting some stuff that they don't really believe in on their patches, that's all. Yeah. Here's another alien gray eating a B-2 bomber. And I say eating because I know what the phrase means underneath. This is a classified flight test number 509. I do not know what those trident symbols are in the background. And it has something that looks like a male symbol on the B-2 bomber there, but it doesn't have the arrow. It's not a feminine symbol. It's like an O with a little, kind of protrusion coming out of it. But the alien seems to be devouring this B-2 bomber, and gustos similis pullus means tastes like chicken. So I guess that's a reference to the aliens' taste of the B-2 bomber. I mean, they get weirder and weirder, folks, you know? I mean, it's perfectly normal, well psychologically adjusted people working in this office, clearly, with pure American values. This is the most recent one. Launch 39 happened, or it might not be the most recent, but it's a very recent one. This went off in 2013. An octopus, basically devouring the earth with its tentacles all over the earth. And it says, nothing is beyond our reach. I don't know how much more blatant you want to get. I mean, you know, they're telling you, this is Cthulhu-like in its scope, you know, the macrobes, you know, of Lovecraftian visage here, you know, just holding the earth in its grip. You know, I don't personally think anybody who sees this as super sinister is making any kind of a big deal about it. I think it speaks for itself. I mean, if you can't see that there's sinister overtones to that, you know, big, huge, Cthulhu-like demon octopus entity devouring the earth, you know? And that's what they are. I mean, they're really telling you what they're doing, as far as I'm concerned. Here's more alien or demonic or shadow people symbolism with this chevron shape that keeps appearing over and over again. 23D, space operations, semper vigilans, which means always watching or always watchful. Now I'm going to move into some of these mission patches that deal with clearly occultic imagery, clearly wizard imagery. You know, certain subdivisions of the people within the NRO actually refer to themselves as the wizards, I have heard, okay, through people who have studied some of this, space aspects to the control system a little bit more. They have put forward that there's, you know, certain special mission teams within these organizations that refer to themselves as the wizards or the sorcerers, because they have the highest level inside knowledge about what the actual purpose of these missions are, whereas everybody else is on a need-to-know basis. So they're the inner circle of the inner circle, you might say. And in this case, it's the flight test squadron. You see a sword, a sorcerer's sword there. It's the sorcerer sending a lightning bolt down to the mountains. He's in some kind of a chevron-shaped craft. He's holding that O-shaped thing with the little protrusion coming out of it. You know, I can't tell you what that is because I don't know. And, you know, he's casting some kind of a spell, and there you see that star configuration once again, the 5 and the 1, repeated again. And, you know, if anybody sees anything that I don't, I'm welcome to interpretations. Email me or, you know, just get a hold of me afterward and, you know, tell me what you thought or what you saw. If I missed something or didn't touch on something, that's fine. Please do bring it to my attention. Here's more wizard symbology. This whole section will deal with wizards and sorcerers. They don't have anything to do with the occult, these people. Don't worry about it, folks. It's completely innocent. These people are not occultists. They're not dark occultists. They're not involved in this in any way. You know, he's again holding a some type of a scepter, presiding over the earth. Again, there's that lightning bolt. You have the craft sending some kind of a satellite into orbit. 1 star over the wizard's hat. I don't know what the letters CW represent, but the Latin translation of Arcana Imperii is imperial secret knowledge, or secret knowledge of the empire, you know, because we have an empire, right? You know, this is an empire. It wasn't intended to be a republic. We're an empire, and we have the secret knowledge of the empire is what they're telling you. You know, they're the wizards who have the secret knowledge of how these covert sciences really work. Here's more wizard, electric wizard symbology, I guess you could call this. Over and over again, lightning bolts pointed at the earth. This is all about, I feel, scalar technology. and the ability to create energy systems at will. It's a perverted application of some of Tesla's patents and technologies and higher level sciences that he was working on to bring forward for the betterment of humanity. And then these dark, sick, psychopathic sorcerers took all that and employed it for destructive purposes and control purposes, as they always do. That's all they can do, is take somebody else's work and pervert it. So here's one other one. The same motif once again, clearly depicted, the scepter shooting the lightning bolt down at the earth with the orb in his other hand. Here's more blatantly wizard, dark wizard iconography here. I'm not sure what they're getting at, what that object going into that ball is. It could be wormhole symbolism for all I know. Your guess is probably as good as mine. Yeah, they're assessing the future all right. They're assessing the future for total takeover and slavery. And then they get, purely dark, don't ask because it's none of your effing business. But, maybe this had something to do with the moon. We have the crescent moon on there and then the question mark. They're not even going to give you any hints or symbolism. And, then it gets even worse than that because then there's just the blank one, that says, si ego certiorem faciam mihi tu delendus eris. I guess my Latin pronunciation is not too shabby. It might not be perfect, but that means if I made you aware, you would have to be destroyed by me, or I would have to kill you. So if I told you about what this is about, I would have to kill you. That's what that loosely translates to. And there's nothing in the middle of the patch.
I hear they're available for kids' birthdays.
Yeah. A great group of guys you'd probably want to hang out with. They're clearly very mentally balanced. Okay, so look, in that section, for all I have to say is if anybody looking at the occult symbology of those patches doesn't understand that at the highest levels of intelligence and government in this country, you have people who are involved in a sick religion. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they're telling you. I don't need to say a word. They're telling you right there. This is the last section for today, and if time allows, I will take some questions at the end. I just want to briefly mention, we do have a raffle that we were running. There's 3 prizes that I'm going to be giving out at the end. So if people want to make any last-minute raffle tickets, Barb has them at the desk. I'll take a little bit of time after the finish of the lecture, and then we will hold a raffle drawing. We'll do 3 prizes. 1 prize will be a DVD of your choice, 1 prize will be a t-shirt, and 1 prize will be a combination, a t-shirt and a DVD of your choice. Those will be the 3 prizes for the raffle. So I just wanted to mention that. I apologize for forgetting to mention that at the beginning of this section like I was supposed to. But the Tarot's major arcana, the self and the universe revealed in symbol. Okay, now I'm going to do this in a very simple way, but I'm going to try to tie together a few different occult traditions in this section, namely the Tarot and Kabbalah, and help people to understand how occult traditions cannot really be studied in isolation. They have to be studied with respect to each other. This is critically important when it comes to how these traditions cross over, how their symbolism all interrelates with each other. And I think if you really understand how I'm going to lay this out, some people will have seen me do this in my own podcast, but I'm going to lay it out in a little bit nicer of a way for this presentation. If you can really understand the correlations between these symbols, this section is so powerful. When I understood this, when I studied the Tarot in conjunction with the Kabbalah deeply enough to make this connection, with the help of some other occultists and researchers, it's like it was beyond an epiphany. It was beyond an aha moment. It was like, it was beyond getting chills up your spine. It was, it was like the top of my head completely blew off, Epiphany is an understatement when it comes to it because you realize how powerfully interconnected the people that made these systems were with this knowledge. These these symbolic systems that are intended to teach wordlessly through symbol and allegory. The people who came up with them were beyond brilliant. And hopefully I can get people to see that, and it will spark some of your own personal study on your own in these traditions. So we broke down in a rudimentary way, we broke down the Kabbalistic tree of life earlier. Remember, it represents different aspects of the human consciousness. And the whole goal of the Kabbalah was to teach a moral lesson. It was to teach how we could bring ourselves into harmony with the higher consciousness and in harmony with natural law. And in order to do that, we have to develop the desire to get out of the base consciousness, Malkuth as it is known, kingdom, okay? And we have to first develop that desire, which comes up from the sacrum chakra, that sexual union energy of, the desire to better oneself and transform oneself, and then develop the willpower to care enough to transform ourselves, help the process of transformation in others, acquire the understanding of natural law principles, and then put those to work in our life through our actions. When we do that, that's when we are truly communing with divine consciousness, or with unity consciousness, the top level of the tree of life, Keter. Again, we talked about the correspondence to the Vedic system of chakras and how these systems kind of like had some interplay with their symbolism. What I want to do here today is show you how the tarot must be studied in conjunction with the Kabbalistic tree of life. They're inseparable. They go together and can't be studied in isolation from each other if they're to be truly understood. Now, how many spheres are on the tree of life? 10. 10 major sephirot, right? The sphere called Da'at was not one of the sephirot. It was considered in the Kabbalistic tradition the place from which the tree grows, or the origin of the tree. It is the essence of the tree, and it represents knowledge. The word da'at in Hebrew means knowledge. So, if we look at that as the essence of one of the trees in Kabbalah, we have really two trees of life. There's a macrocosmic tree and a microcosmic tree. These two trees are talked about in biblical symbolism in the book of Revelation. All right? And what they really represent is the microcosmic tree of the qualities of the self, and then the macrocosmic tree of the qualities of nature, of the universe. So what I did right here is I took the first 11 cards of the major arcana, and I dealt them in a very specific progression onto the Kabbalistic tree of life. We're going to do the same for the second 11 cards with the macrocosmic tree of life. All right? So, 22 cards in the major arcana. 1111. There's another very spiritual number, a very significant synchronistic and synchromistic number, 1111. Okay, how many people, just off the cuff, on a whim here, how many people have personal experience or personal synchronicity with the number 1111 by a show of hands? Okay, that's maybe a third of the room. 1111 is known as the light worker's call. What it means is, if you're seeing this over and over and over again, let me tell you something. When I was starting to wake up, I saw 1111 so much. It was like so haunting that I was tired of seeing it. It was so bizarre. At some point, it was just like, oh yeah, again, really? Non-stop. What I feel it means is that if you're receiving that, it means you're at a level of development already that you need to go forward, and you need to communicate the information that you already know. You're one of the people who, I don't even want to use the word chosen or selected. That's not the right word. You have an aptitude for the gift of teaching in some form or fashion. And therefore, this repeating number is getting in your head and it's getting in your face and it's saying, start to do the work. At least that's what it was for me. That was my experience with the number. And there's a general consensus, you know, in the analysis of this meme going around, an analysis of this experience, if you will, of 1111. The reason I'm bringing it up is because 1111 is symbolically encoded in this breakdown that I'm putting forward. We're using 11 cards, the first half of the major arcana in the microcosmic tree, and then the second 11 cards in the macrocosmic tree. Now, how I have dealt them is simply in that order that we talked about of the spheres, the Sephirot's numbered system. At the top where you have Malkuth, that's 1. Then you move to the right side, that's 2. Then to the left side, that's 3. Then you move down a notch, that's 4. And then to the other side, that's 5. Then to the center, Tiferet, the green card there, that's 6. Then down to the yellow level on the right, that's 7. The yellow level on the left, that's 8. The middle orange card there, represented by the Hermit, that's 9. And then finally 10 at the Wheel of Fortune. Okay? So that's that, remember that Kabbalistic lightning bolt, the thunderstruck tree. All right, that pattern of 1 through 10 going like this. All right, now in the dot position, I have put the card, the Fool. The Fool is in the dot position. What is the first body of knowledge in the occult? It's the knowledge of self. It's the knowledge of the human psyche and how it operates. That's the dot position, the knowledge of self. This is the self card. It's properly understood. It's not the Fool card, it's the soul card. Okay, that's an actual phonetic and written English letter variant, how it became the Fool. If you even look into the history of this card, it was not originally the Fool card, it was originally the soul card. And then through phonetic variants and, you know, mistransliterations, it became over time the Fool, and that got ran with that in the imagery. You know, the being going off into the land of incarnation without much knowledge and, you know, without a whole lot of baggage to back him up, taking a leap of faith coming into this world, trying to make any change happen here. That's certainly a fool's errand, isn't it? But, you know, not to be dissuaded from that work, this is also a leap of faith and an act of will, that he's going to go into that realm and survive it and create a change. Because it's not just him being in a naive state, it's him also being in a trusting state with the light at his back. You know, the light has his back, the sun. It's the sun card. You know, the 0 card, it's the no thing. It's the pure essence of spirit or the spark of the divine. Amazing symbolism and just contained in that one card. I could give a whole lecture just on that one card. But, you know, we're putting him in the dot position because this tree is about the knowledge of self as the microcosmic layer of knowledge in the occult. Okay? So then we're going to look at all 10 of the cards, but backwards from 10 to 1. This is the Fool's journey. The Fool's journey from darkness and ignorance at the bottom of the tree in Malkuth, in worldly, earthbound identification, all the way up to the position of self-mastery as the magician or the magi at the crown level of Keter on the tree of life. So here we go with the journey of the soul, the journey of the self, the Fool's journey. And there I'm showing where the Fool is at the dot position. All right, now we're going to start at Malkuth. Let's go down to Malkuth, the bottom of the tree of life, at the Wheel of Fortune, card number 10. The Wheel of Fortune represents pure earth identification. It represents not really having knowledge. That's why you're on the wheel. It's the wheel of karma. When we are in ignorance, we are subject. We're not in a state of self-mastery. We are subjects. We are ruled by the forces. We are ruled by the base instincts, the base passions. Okay, so This staying at this level of earthly identification and base identification and base instinctual feeding will keep us on the wheel of karma. We're not going to grow and learn and progress. What gets us out of this earthbound identification is desire. And I don't mean just desire to want things in an egoic way. I'm talking about the desire for more, the desire for betterment within the self, okay? The desire for self-knowledge, the desire to know oneself, and then to know also about the realm in which we operate, the natural world and its laws. So, when we make that decision to develop that desire for truth, for light, for knowledge, that's where the hermit comes in. The hermit card represents the desire for knowledge. See, he's not in a state of knowledge. He's not the purified being in the white robe. He has gray robes on. He's humbled. He knows that he doesn't know. He knows how much he still has to learn. And he's lighting the lamp to go off in search of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. That, again, has been the color I've used to direct this whole presentation for today, because this is supposed to be about whetting someone's appetite to help to spark within the individual the desire for greater knowledge, the desire for more knowledge about the occult and what it really contains and how it can really help to transform oneself. So that's what we have to aspire as a species to become. Then we could start making progress out of Malkuth. And there's desire within a good number of people. Like I said, if I thought it was hopeless, folks, I wouldn't say a word. It can still be done, even at this late hour. It's a matter of will we do it, So let's move to the next card at the 8 position. And this would be, we would be at the solar plexus chakra level on the tree of life at this point. Again, this is a dualistic chakra. This is a dualistic level of the tree of life. There is on the feminine pillar, which is depicted on the left side of the Kabbalistic tree, there's the internal qualities of the self. And on the right-hand side, there's externalized qualities. So you have to look at that pillar going up and down the left-hand side, those 3 cards, that's known as the pillar of severity. But in Kabbalistic terms, what that pillar represents is internal qualities. It can represent darkness as well, if you look at it from a certain perspective. That which is not readily seen, which is on the inside, that you have to penetrate a little bit deeper to see or to find. And then these 3 cards on the right-hand pillar, the pillar of mercy, are the more masculine or active properties of the self, as we'll see, okay? So at this level, this is the courage or strength card. And the 2 aspects of will, there's an internal quality, which is courage, right? Courage is developed within. Then you have to do something in the external world to bring courage into manifestation, to act upon it. And then we go to the next level and we see that's the chariot, which represents will in the tarot. So you had the 1 card with the woman holding the lion's mouth open fearlessly, which represents courage. Okay, that's an internal feminine quality. Now you have the masculine quality of getting things done in the real world, the will to act. All right, so these are both the solar plexus will center, but the dualistic aspects of it. One is an internal aspect, a feminine aspect, and one is a external or masculinized aspect. All right, we're going to move up to the Tiferet card, which is the heart chakra. Tiferet is beauty. And again, there we have the symbol of the heart, the lovers. The symbolism is so consistent. It's so consistent when you learn this arrangement of cards. The people who developed the tarot deck clearly studied it in conjunction with the ancient Hebraic systems, Kabbalah, and even older systems. And these cards clearly were around long before even those traditions, because they came out of the ancient Comitian tradition, as many researchers, not the least of which was Michael Tessarion, has done a lot of work to establish and end that debate, hopefully. But the generative principle is depicted here, the union of the male and female. It's not just about sexual union, we're talking about unifying the masculine and feminine aspects of self, such that we develop true care, the generative principle. And again, that is the lover's card depicted right in the middle of the tree of life. This position, the Tiferet position on the tree, every card is connected to. Every card has direct path, line of sight to the Tiferet card, because that's the central focus of the tree. The generative principle, the heart, is at the core of everything, what we care about enough to do in our life or to put into manifestation in our life is actually what gets done and gets manifested. And that's why it's called the generative or creative principle. Let's move up another level, and we are at the severity Sephirot. Geburah, the Hierophant is there. Now, this card is placed on the pillar of severity. It's at the sphere called severity, Geburah, and this card represents working with the self, actually motivating yourself to change. And that's why it's called severity. It's like the parts of yourself you have to whip into shape. The parts of yourself you don't want to be kind to because you want to change. And those qualities you should want to change. The dark aspects within us that we need to work upon. That's what this card represents, getting in and working with. That's why it's the Pope. It represents internal religion, getting the reins over those dark aspects of the self. This is a card representing self-control. Religion's one of the control systems, but true religion can be a motivating force if we're guiding our actions toward truth, if the religion is about truth. So this is about self-control. This is about reeling in the aspects of the self that we need to reel in. When we move to the mercy Sephirah, which is Hesed, we see that in that position we have the Emperor card. And again, this is the twin aspect to religion. We have the state now, the Emperor. So you have religion and you have government. Now, this card represents mercy. Okay, this is about how are you going to influence other people around you. The other side of this, again, we're at the throat chakra now. So this is all about the voice, right? What kind of internal voice do you work with within yourself? The dialogue that's going on within you, okay? What are you telling yourself? How are you motivating yourself through your internal dialogue to change? That's what the severity card was about, the Hierophant. Now we're at the mercy card. We're turning that external to the self. This is the masculine side of the tree of life, where we're saying, how do you influence others in the world? Once you've arrived at a certain level of knowledge and understanding and care, how do you work with other people to help them to manifest change in their own lives? And that's why the Emperor it's the symbol of state, because it's the thing that does influence, quote unquote, control toward others. I'm not saying that means you want to go out and try to control everybody else, but it's the symbol of external influence, let's call it, whereas the Hierophant or Pope is the symbol of internal influence upon oneself. I hope that's clear and makes sense to people. We're coming up now to the next chakra, which is the third eye chakra, representing true intelligence. So we have a feminine aspect to that and a masculine aspect to that on the two sides of the tree, respectively. The Empress is at the top of the feminine side of the microcosmic or soul tree of life, the personal aspects of the tree of life. This is the Binah Sephirah, and Binah means understanding. Understanding is an internal quality, as we talked about. It's what goes on within yourself. You take in the knowledge, you process it through mental processes, and then you come to a level of understanding internally. So this is the feminine aspect of understanding, which is an internal process. And you could also look at that as a right brain or sacred feminine quality. The high priestess, while of course depicting the goddess, in this case the goddess Isis, is a feminine figure on the card. This card represents the top of the masculine pillar on the tree of life as an active quality. The goddess represented wisdom, and you see her between the two pillars, similar in Freemasonry, Boaz and Jachin, or Yakin. And of course, these are corollaries to the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy in the Kabbalistic tree as well. So again, Freemasonry, Tarot, Kabbalah, they all have to be studied in conjunction with each other. They are not separate sciences. They're really, again, many paths to the same destination. It's a different way of explaining correspondences and knowledge, but you get to the same end result. So the High Priestess card is actually wisdom. This card represents wisdom. Now, wisdom is not an internal quality. Wisdom, as we talked about, is what we do with what we know. It's an active process. It's taking action based upon what you have come to understand. And again, you had to get there, folks. The lightning bolt goes, if we look at this blue level, okay, the lightning bolt goes diagonally up, left to right, past self-knowledge. See, that's knowledge in the middle, the white card, the Fool card, as the Da'at card. So you have knowledge, then at the top rung, you have understanding and wisdom. What are the trivium processes? Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Da'at, Binah, Hokmah. Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom are actually the top triangle of the tree of life before you get to the crown, which is self-mastery, which is sovereignty under the Creator, true self-government, okay? So, again, this High Priestess card, sacred feminine iconography on the card, she's holding the law, Torah, right, in between the two pillars as the balance point. And she represents wisdom ultimately, which is a masculine quality regarding action, what we do with what we know. And when we put the knowledge that we have taken into ourselves and come to understand into practice, that's when we are putting wisdom into our lives and into the world. And that's when we move toward the highest level of consciousness, self-mastery, sovereignty, true self-respect, true self-love, actively being involved as a magician in this world. The magician is the one who stands between the realms, who stands between the worlds. You know, again, he has his head in the cosmos, but his feet on the ground. He is an anchoring point. He is a bridge. He's bridging the light of the Creator down to the world, which is why he has the scepter of power connected to the higher realm, but he's pointing at the earth. And he's mastered all the forces of nature. The wand, the sword, the cup, and the pentacles, earth, air, water, and fire, the four elements again. Okay, so this card represents self-mastery from total ignorance and base identification at Malkuth, coming up through all those other characteristics of the self on the personal journey on the microcosmic tree to the highest level, to Keter, or the crown chakra, which represents total self-mastery. The allegory is perfect. By show of hands, how many people, besides in my podcast series, have seen this arrangement of cards in tarot? By a show of hands. One person. Anybody else? Two. Two people. Okay? At three. Okay, three people in the room. To me, this shows, and not in any way trying to make this any kind of a harsh statement, but it shows people don't have in-depth knowledge of how these systems interrelate with each other and how they fit together. And I'm sure people who are completely unfamiliar with the occult and completely unfamiliar with my work have really never heard of any part of this or ever even seen any interpretations of these cards. Again, I'm not telling you these are the only interpretations that can be given, but look at how well the symbolism relates with the concepts of the tree of life and the spheres upon it. All right, it's a perfect allegory as far as I'm concerned. And very, very, very few people study the tarot in this way. They don't combine it with the Kabbalistic tradition, and they don't see the powerful transformative aspects that that symbolism can play practically in your life if you really deeply, richly understand the symbolism. So I just hope that this kind of conveys this in a way that's readily understood. I hope it did anyway. I'm going to move to the macrocosmic tree of life, and we're going to see how that arrangement of the second 11 cards of the major arcana of the tarot tell us all about the forces at work in nature. And it'll also tell us about the two ways that a civilization can go. All right, so let's look at that. So here I've built the macrocosmic tree of life from the second 11 cards of the major arcana of the tarot deck. So I'm starting with card number 11, which is the Justice card, which is the most important card in the entire tarot deck as far as I'm concerned. Card number 11. We'll get to why that is. And then I'm moving with the lightning bolt pattern throughout the tree all the way down to card number 20. So really all we've done here is, we're adding 10. We started at 1 before and went to 10. Now every card there is the next, 10 numbers up. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Card number 21, the last card of the tarot, because it starts at 0 and it goes through card number 21. It's not 1 through 22. It's 0 through 21. 21 is a very sacred number. It represents the tripling of 7. That is the number that represents man coming into union with the divine, coming into God-like consciousness, not being God, but coming into a level of consciousness that embodies the divine and embodies, the epitome of spiritual essence or spiritual nature while still being in flesh, while still being incarnate in the physical realm. So in the dot position, again, because the second realm of knowledge in the occult is what? The realm of the macrocosmic laws, the laws that govern the universe, both in the seen realm, meaning the physical laws, the physical sciences, and in the unseen realm, meaning the spiritual laws, or in other words, natural law. So in the dot position, we have now the world, or in some decks, the universe. Okay, so we had the soul card in the dot position on the microcosmic tree, and now we have the universe or the world in the dot position, the position of knowledge in the macrocosmic tree. Perfectly consistent. All right, so I hope people are understanding here. I'm not looking for relationships or, trying to bridge anything. It's so consistent when you lay it out this way, it's readily seeable. This is not something I'm stretching for, is what I'm trying to get at here. It should be readily be able to be seen by anybody who can make these simple correspondences. So, we have the forces of nature, the lion, the man, the bull, and the eagle. The 4 cardinal points of the zodiac, the 4 cardinal directions. You have the gospel writers, they were depicted as the forces of nature, earth, air, water, and fire, etc. You can go on and on with what those represent. Again, you have that symbol of purity and innocence in the middle of the image holding the 2 scepters, very similar to how we started in a state of ignorance and moved up to a state of self-knowledge. But there was this purity and innocence card in the middle in the dot position, represented by the Fool card in the microcosmic tree. And there's the position of the world card on the macrocosmic tree. Again, that is not at one of the Sephirot positions, but it is at the dot or knowledge position. So let's start the journey of the understanding of the forces at nature, the forces at work in nature. So in the Malkut position of kingdom, the lowest level, base identified consciousness, you have the card called Judgment, represented by the angel of revelation blowing the trumpet, a call to awakening. This is a clarion call to awaken. We are being called up out of our slumber. We are being called up out of earthly, base identification and ego identification to a higher level of understanding. Some people will answer that call. Some will not. Some will be resurrected. Some will stay dead. Okay, so if they do indeed resurrect through desire for light, desire for knowledge, desire for truth, then they will come out of those tombs. If not, they will stay in the realm of judgment, which is Malkuth. Just like you could be the hermit and come out of that realm represented by the Wheel of Fortune, seeming chance fate, the checkered life of man, the floor of the house in Freemasonry. You know, you can come up in the microcosmic tree to the hermit through desire, through personal desire for knowledge, or you can stay in Malkuth, which represented, you know, the Wheel of Fortune. Well, this is the same thing on a macrocosmic scale. The universe, the will of creation, is calling all species up to a higher level of evolutionary progression out of that base realm. And we can respond to that call or not. Those who are gifted with the capacity for holistic intelligence have the ability to choose whether they will come out of that ego-identified state or not. That's free will. I would say this card represents free will in and of itself. I would say this is the free will card of the tarot deck because it's giving us a choice whether we will receive truth or not. See, this is a card about reception. Again, the theme here is reception. The theme of the day is reception. Reception of truth, reception of knowledge. The word Kabbalah means reception. It means proper reception, the proper way to receive, the proper way to open up one's mind and heart, you know, to the knowledge of the cosmos, to the knowledge of the self. A beautiful tradition when properly understood and used properly. This I consider the free will card of the deck. It's saying you have free will to transform yourself or to stay deadened. And if we move forward, I would say going up to the next level, again, one of the most important cards in the deck, and again, the orange card, another theme throughout the day here, this orange color, representing desire, representing choice. This is a card that I feel represents choice. The card represents the light, knowledge, truth, the sun. Again, we saw all of that in the symbolism section. That card is the truth card. What's the light that's calling us up from that Malkuth position that the angel's blowing the trumpet for behind her head? It's the light, it's the sun, it's truth. This is the truth card of the deck. But it also represents a choice because the paths converge from that point. And yes, you could still see we're going to make our way up in the lightning bolt progression to get to the top of the tree. But the microcosmic tree is slightly different than the macrocosmic tree is slightly different than the microcosmic one because this card represents a choice point. Will you receive truth? Will a civilization receive truth or not? That's what this card is the choice point for. It's the truth card. And it's the choice of whether we will receive truth or not. Now remember, there's the path of severity to the left and the path of mercy to the right. In this arrangement, I do feel that there is a negative connotation on the left-hand path and a positive connotation on the right-hand path, as we will see when I further break this down. The left-hand path going from this point forward represents the rejection of truth. The right-hand path up the tree represents the acceptance of truth. Okay? The middle pillar represents the choice point that we have to either receive or not receive truth. And then the middle card there, as we will see at the Tiferet position, means the care to change. Ultimately, that's the change card. All right? So if we decide to not receive truth, to reject truth, we go to this position. Okay, so this is the moon, which again, symbolically represented in Freemasonry, that darkness side. You can look at it as a feminine symbol, a piece of feminine symbolism as well. But in this connotation, It means night, darkness. These creatures here in the traditional interpretation of this card, it means ignorance. This has traditionally represented ignorance in the breakdown of the symbology of the moon card. And I would suggest that's what it means here in this position. It means we have not chosen to receive the truth. Conversely, on the active side of the tree, the pillar of mercy, the star card represents all of the other lights of the heavens that are suns. And as such, this is the alchemy card. It represents that we have decided to accept truth into our lives and integrate it. When we move up to the next layer, we're at the heart chakra now. And again, look, folks, that yellow level represents will. Okay, we're making a decision in will, in our guts, whether to accept truth or not. So that ignorance card is a willful position. It's taking a willful position. When people reject truth, that's a willful act. And when people accept truth, that's a willful act. So that totally correlates to the solar plexus chakra, the will center. But now we're moving up to the heart chakra. Again, a unity chakra, right? The heart, the generative principle, what ultimately drives change. The generative principle is what creates change in our lives and in the whole society. So this is the change card, and this card itself is neither negative or positive. It simply represents change, often sudden change. Because once truth is either accepted or rejected, sudden change follows. And I think the choice point that, this symbolically really represents, I think 9/11 was one of the defining hallmarks of our time. And the rejection of that truth, I think, has set humanity off onto the left-hand path. We have to care enough to bring it back to that, point of accepting truth, and maybe we can get up the other side, up to the middle at the top at some point. But, the symbolism of 9/11 here is actually very overt, actually. The thunderstruck tower. Sudden change could be for the good, could be for the bad. Either way, change is coming. The universe abhors a vacuum and abhors stagnation. Change is always happening. Now we're moving up to the next level, the throat chakra. Again, you have severity here. What follows the rejection of truth as you go up that left-hand side? Self-imposed slavery under dark forces. This is where humanity's at. That's where we're at now because of the level of truth that we've rejected. And I always point out, as do other researchers who have deeply studied the symbolism of these cards, the chains are self-imposed. They're loose around their neck. They could take them off at any time. He's not holding them there with tight chains. Those chains could be easily slipped off over the head. They want to stay in their chains because they want to remain in their ignorance. Truth has been presented, it is there, and they've rejected it. And therefore they're ruled, they're owned. So that's the devil card. Conversely, the other side of the tree represents what could happen if we make the other choice. If we accept the truth of creation in the form of the light of the sun, and we start to go up the right-hand pillar, this is the pillar of mercy, the middle of it, the mercy card, the temperance card, then we're on the road to sovereignty, the road to the crown, right? Everything is flowing. The being is becoming enlightened. This is the freedom card of the tarot, whereas the devil card is the slavery card. So we have the call to awakening and free will at the bottom. We have truth, the sun card. We have the rejection of truth, the moon card. We have the acceptance of truth, the star card. We have change, rapid onset of change, the tower card. We have the slavery card, the devil card. And now we have the card that represents freedom societally. Once we have accepted truth, we can have that state of consciousness, freedom. We move through the knowledge card, which is at the dot position, the world, the knowledge of natural law, the knowledge of the universe, and we get to the final expression of the pillar of severity, death, extinction, stagnation, entropy. This is what ultimately results, the foiling of the evolutionary process. That's what happens when we go up the left-hand path of rejection of truth and slavery, ultimately leading to death, extinction, and undifferentiated chaos at some point. Now, this is the entropy card of the tarot deck. That's the force that this card ultimately represents, the death card. And you're seeing he's mowing down all the institutions. No one is safe. Everyone is going to go. This is the cataclysm card. You know, like we talked about in the theosophy section. Eventually, you know, nature abhors when we continually reject truth and, you know, pollute ourselves and the world, and eventually it comes in and cleans house. It's the weeding process that can happen and will happen should we not change. So that's the entropy card. Now we go to the opposite side, the active side of the tree of life. And this is the syntropy card, the ordering force. The hanged man is not a negative card. It's probably one of the most powerful and positive pieces of symbolism in the deck. This is the enlightened man who is doing the true will. I would call this the true will card. You know, that's the initiate. That's having accepted the truth, having gone forward and worked to create freedom, and now this is the true evolution of consciousness. That's what this force represents. The ordering principle, the evolution of consciousness at the top of the pillar of mercy. This is the evolution card. This is what I would call the syntropy card, the force that counteracts the force of entropy and chaos. This is the order card of the deck. Such powerful allegories rolled into all of this symbolism. I mean, the people who put these systems together, you know, all I'm doing here is providing an interpretation. Imagine the level of consciousness of the people who built these systems of symbolism and allegory and interconnection between them. You know, we're talking about a whole nother level. And then we get to the highest force in creation, the force that governs it all, natural law, justice, the king on his throne that can never be unthroned, can never be dethroned. This is the force of truth and will and freedom and love and evolution and law in nature. It's the will of God card, you could call it. It's the boundary conditions of the Creator card. Again, in my natural law seminar, I put this card forward as the card of the tarot deck, which represents natural law itself, because that is what it is. This is what the dark occult wants to dethrone and usurp the position of. They want to be God. They want to be the law. Ultimately, that is the most important card of the entire tarot deck because it is the law card itself. And this is the understanding of natural law is ultimately the only thing that can resurrect this species and put us onto a new path. That is what the dark occultists don't want us to understand, which is why I have always referred to the knowledge of natural law as the most occulted knowledge on the earth. And I'll end this presentation the same way I ended last year here in Connecticut by saying, the law is king and can never be dethroned from its proper place at the crown, at the highest level of creation and the highest level of authority in the universe. This is the only authority that exists in the universe, natural law. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind attention today. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, that Latin phrase there, lex rex, simply means the law is king. We'll open up the floor to some questions, and I'll take a